All right, I think everybody's here now.
All right. Namaskar. My name is Gaurav Rastogi. I'm going to be I'll be leading this discussion on Hinduism and introduction to Hinduism. I'm based in the San Francisco Bay Area, where it has been raining for so long that my friends from around the world have been asking if everything is all right, because naturally they're seeing, things being washed into the ocean. But we're fine so far. We do not say bad things about the rain because it's a drought state, and we appreciate all the water we can get. And today we're talking for about a short of 3 hours, and I want to cover three topics with you. I'll give you an introduction to Hinduism. We will visit a temple, and then I will talk about the needs of spiritual care as seen from the Hindu community. I will tell you a little bit about my background to begin with as well, so we're sort of grounded and settled. Ground rules for today's discussion is number one, this is a safe class. You are welcome and invited to engage me in any questions that you have. No curiosity is too idle, no question is insulting. It is important for me to address your questions and hear everything that you have going on, because I understand that this is your opportunity to go hear from different traditions and how they practice, and so this is a safe space for questions, and discussions and debates are going to be part of how we run this class. The other thing is that if you have comments, you put them into the chat, and I will pick them up, and we will address them as we go along. Um, and then if there's anything to begin with, or you have pressing questions up front that you need me to answer, for sure, if you type those in, I would take those into consideration. With that said, let me introduce you enough about me. No, you haven't heard enough about me. I have, like many of you, I'm sure, two lives. I'm a business executive by day and by evening and by pretty much every other part of the day. I've worked in large companies. I've worked in startups. I've founded and sold my own startup. I'm interested in technology. I write books on business and technology. And this is one side of me. I don't know if it's left or right. You figure that out for yourself. But that's one side of me. I'm a regular guy. I have a family. We have two kids, and so on. But on the other hand, I'm a yogi. I've been practicing and teaching yoga, pranayama, and meditation. Practicing for 3 decades, teaching for about over a decade for yoga, and about a decade for pranayama and meditation. And I teach yoga philosophy. I run a school for which is a pre-chaplaincy school in around the world, and I will remind that it is a pre-chaplaincy school. This program works together with Graduate Theological Union in Berkeley, which I'm sure you're familiar with. And so we have people that are working on their path to becoming Hindu chaplains. I run that program as the Hindu faculty at that program as well. I also run the Living Deeply Foundation. My project is what I call the Yoga of Living Deeply, where I'm trying to create a pattern language. Not enough time today to talk about it, but creating a language for everyday people to engage more deeply in their work, their lives, while bringing authentic spirituality and practices into their lives. I call it the yoga of living deeply, and that's what the foundation is about. And so this is the side that's speaking to you today. On this side, I'm going to be making a presentation, so it's all here, and I'll be sharing the slides. I'm going to begin with the opening prayers. And Robin, thank you for the reminder. This class is being recorded, and if you have objections to it, please do let me know. Your questions, in general, my face is what shows up, and that's what goes into the recording, unless you're asking a question, in which case your face and your question will show up as well. So if you have objections, do let me know, and we'll snip that out of the recording. This is the opening prayer. This is a fun opening prayer for the simple reason that it's its setting and context is practically identical to the conversation we're about to have. This is a verse from the Upanishads, which are sacred and secret conversations between a teacher and the students who are sitting nearby. So it is not something that you're not having a conversation with a crowd. You're having a private conversation with people that are seated close by, and so you can whisper those things that cannot be screamed aloud. And so prior to those Upanishadic discourses, Upanishad being the word, come sit near, prior to those, this sort of almost legalistic disclaimer is chanted out. Why it's legalistic, I'm about to tell you. It's a mutual prayer. We're chanting this. Well, I'm chanting it, but it's for the two of us together. May we both be protected. But protected from what? But protected, maybe both be protected, maybe both be nourished. In this conversation, may it bring both of us joy and nourishment. May we work together with great energy, and may our knowledge be radiant. The knowledge that results from this conversation, this great energy, may that radiate out. May there be no differences or disputes between us. Now, this is not to say that, in fact, this is precisely to say that let us air our differences and disputes. Let's have that conversation. This is why we're creating a safe space, so that by the end of it, there are no differences or disputes. This is not a conversation where I say things that you take on face value. This is a conversation where we both jostle with each other until we arrive at a truth that, through our act of working together, gives us the radiance that radiates out from us into the universe. That's the objective of this prayer. It ends with three shantis, shanti meaning peace, inside, around, and between us. And that's a conventional prayer. I'm going to chant that for you. And I'd like you to just experience that by sitting comfortably and keeping the ears open and your eyes closed. Now, I'll just guide you through. So please sit comfortably. Sit in any comfortable posture. If you're sitting on your bed, you can sit cross-legged. If you're sitting on a chair, make sure both your feet are in full foot contact, ball and heel on the floor, full foot contact with the floor, not just on resting on the heels of the balls. Sitting upright with the back straight, the back, neck, and head in a straight line. The back is upright, but not stiff. The back, neck, and head are in a straight line. Close your eyes gently and relax the expression on the face. Close your eyes gently and relax the expression on the face. Let the tongue sit at the base of the mouth. Relax your shoulders. Relax your belly. Breathe into the belly and let the belly expand. As you inhale, let the belly expand. As you exhale, simply let go. The back is upright. The back, neck, and head are in a straight line. The eyes are closed gently, and the expression on the face is relaxed. The shoulders are relaxed. You're breathing into the belly, letting the belly expand as you inhale. Letting go as you exhale. Let go of all your thoughts. Let go of all your preoccupations. Let go of all unfinished business and feel a sense of lightness. Breathing into the belly, let the belly expand. Breathing out, simply let go. Bring your palms together in Namaskar Mudra, pressing the palms together gently, touching the fingers together gently, gently touching the back of the thumbs into the chest. Bring your attention into the hollow space between the palms. Paying attention to any vibration, any sensation. Stay right here. as we chant Om 3 times. You can just listen along. I'm going to chant Om 3 times, and then I'll chant the opening prayer. Exhale completely. Take a deep breath. Inhale. 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 Inhale and chant. Sahana vavatu, sahanau bhunaktu, sahaviryam karvavahai, tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Take your arms behind you, grab your right wrist with your left hand, and breathing in, stretch. Breathing out, bend forward in a deep sense of surrender. Come back up, breathing in. Release your hands, rub your palms together to generate some heat. And then gently cup your eyeballs with the warm palms and transfer that heat. And then blinking, open your eyes and pull your palms back like an open book. Namaskar. Namaskar, and welcome back to this session. Once again, my name is Gaurav Rastogi, and we will be talking about Hinduism. At this point, I'm going to pause and see if you have questions and maybe raises of hands. You can raise your hand physically or on the virtual thing. How many of you are Hindu or know Hindu people? Show of hands. 2 or 3, 4 people, so quite a few people. Yes, about half. So you know of Hinduism. You're either practicing Hinduism or you know people that are Hindu. For you and for the others that are new to Hinduism, are there questions that you would like to answer from your role as either a chaplain or a spiritual care practitioner? You're going to be meeting Hindu, my clients and helping them. And it's important for you to understand the inner world of a Hindu person. But also, some of you might be spiritual but not religious. And in which case, welcome to Hinduism, because you're going to hear a lot of that from the talk I'm going to give you today. Hinduism is relatively poorly known, let me rephrase that, poorly understood out here in the West, because usually, we Disneyfy everything and we get the weirdest version of everything. So you might know Hinduism as the eat, pray, love kind of thing that one might think of. You might know the gurus. Some of you look like gurus yourself, so congrats to you. And then some of you might know Hindus with the cliches. And I'm going to begin with some of those Hollywood cliches, because why not? One should always begin with Hollywood cliches. It's always fun. And so Hinduism, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to spend about 45 minutes in this section. I'm going to tell you Hinduism is actually, while being poorly understood, is actually quite familiar. And about some of the things I'm going to tell you, you'll be surprised at how familiar Hinduism will seem by the end of it. I promise you, most of the practices that you know about Hinduism are very, very common and altogether familiar, thanks to the spread of global culture, global thought, and of course, the reawakening of the Western mind. All of those are reasons why you might be familiar with it. All right, with that being said, are there pressing questions or comments that you have that you would like to air out? Now is a good time to air those out. I'm going to pause for about 30 seconds to let you compose your thoughts and say some things. You can type them out if you like. Both are fine. Yes, Scott.
I will run the risk of, I'll be brave about this. This is one of those questions that I've heard of, so forgive me if I'm completely off base, but I wanted to ask about the sound of Om, the OM. I heard or read somewhere, maybe someone told me, is there something about the number three, like three sounds coming together? Is there something to that you could speak to?
Sure. Great question. I got it. I will address it.
Okay,
Next
thank you.
question.
Yes, I'm wondering if you could talk more about the role of protection in Hinduism, especially around maybe rituals for people, birth, death, landmarks. And I've heard about and even seen red bands or string around the wrists of folks who identify as Hindu and would love to learn more about that.
Yeah. I got it. All right. Next.
I'm curious about the difference between religion and culture. I have some friends who say, well, I grew up Hindu, but not really, but I am, but I'm not. I'd love to know more about that.
Great question, frankly. Yes, very nice. Thank you. Legion?
Yes, so I am a Buddhist, a Chinese Buddhist, and in our scriptures, in our sutras, there's this like very pejorative portrait of Hinduism. So I would like to see like your understanding of Buddhism from a Hindu perspective.
I love it. I love this question as well. Great, thank you. All right, I saw another question that was popping up, a thought bubble that was forming. Who was it? No thought bubbles? Okay. Oh, Laura, yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, I have a very practical question. I've been a chaplain for a while. I've had Hindu patients. I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about the kind of support that Hindu patients will often want in the hospital, and also maybe rituals or support around like before end of life, or is it after end of life? Because I know a lot of Buddhists, like they do not want to see the monk unless someone has died. For example, they want only after death for some Buddhist traditions, for example. So just general sickness ritual support after or around the time of death as well.
Yes. Great. Any other questions? These are good. Yes, Kaylin, yes. By the way, Laura, I want to thank you and all the Lauras in the world for helping me explain how my name sounds. I always say it's Gaurav. It kind of sounds like Laura, but with a G. Thank you for lending your name. Yes, Kaylin, yes.
So my background is in Ayurveda and yoga, and so I'm wondering like how much of that, I mean, there's so much Hinduism within those two sciences, obviously. I'm just wondering how much that plays into Hinduism in the opposite way.
Yes, yes, great. Great. Have you got everything? All right, good. More questions as they pop up. Don't hold back. These are all great questions, and I'd probably be doing well by just answering these questions because there's such fantastic questions. But I will bore you with my slides nonetheless because I'll give you a quick primer. But I really want to spend a lot of these 45 minutes on this question. Then I'll take you to the temple as a change of pace. Then I'll come and talk about spiritual care needs of Hindus, because it's a topic of shared interest. So it's going to work both ways. All right, I have a presentation to pull up, and once again, because why not? All right, so Hollywood portrayals of Hindus are kind of like this. This is Indiana Jones and the famous Temple of Doom. There's a guy with a Viking kind of skull hat, and he's doing some fire ritual thingy, and eventually they will be eating monkey brains out of monkey heads. I don't know why, but if that's your brush with Hinduism, well, welcome to this session, because this ain't nothing like what you've seen before. In fact, my claim here is that Hindu ideas are like sliced bread. They are all over. And I'm going to cover some of these because I promise you that you've heard of these ideas yourself. Now, what are these ideas? Like Scott asked, what is Om? What have we talked about? Om. Yes, you've heard the word Om chanted. You've heard the word Dharma, especially I see a few Buddhist people here. You know the word Dharma here. You even know the word karma. Of course, it is appropriated and completely misused. Karma is not a female dog that's out to get you, but hey, you've heard the word karma, and that's important. You've heard of the great band Nirvana, and that's a phrase that term that you've heard. I see that there's a Miss Pujari here, but you've heard the term Pandit, right? And you usually think of a Pandit as a talking head on a TV, but you've heard the word and it probably means something to you. I did this and you knew exactly what I was doing. I was doing Namaste. You've been to a yoga class. 60% of the people in America will now be cremated, not buried. Now, if you're a follower of Abrahamic religious traditions, will explain this to me. What's going to happen on Judgment Day when the body and the spirit cannot no longer be reunited? Well, if you're cremating, then you have a different sense of what happens in the afterlife, in which case, let me tell you more from the Hindu point of view. The idea of reincarnation, if you watched Hollywood sequels, of course, but if you watched Groundhog Day or any other movie, you know the idea of reincarnation. Of course, I'm here to tell you more about it. If you're vegetarian, I am vegetarian. And if you heard of vegetarianism, well, you know something about Hinduism and ecology and this interest in this living planet where we're not separate from the ecology here to exercise our dominion over it, but indeed a part of a dance of ecology. If that's your understanding of nature, well, that too is what goes into Hinduism. So a lot of the ideas I'm about to tell you that Hinduism has, you're already familiar with this as ubiquitous as sliced bread. And by the way, if you've had lunch, that's great, because I'll be talking about food all day. And so it's important that you get everything right. All right. In terms of my background, in fourth grade, I was doing this. Now you look carefully at this chart. You tell me, find Canaan next to the Sea of Galilee. This is what I was doing in fourth grade. I grew up in India, and I went to a Presbyterian run sort of school. It's a Christian school. My education was in the Bible. And this is, I think we were transitioning in fourth and fifth grade from the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament, as they call it, to the New Testament. And of course, here I am trying to find out Canaan next to the Sea of Galilee. Mr. Dorsey, an American teacher, he ran the school. This was a great moral science class. And so I'm somewhat familiar with Christianity on that account. But then I grew up in the Hindu household, and my parents are Hindu. I grew up in India. I teach Hinduism here. And so my understanding of Hinduism came through osmosis. It was in the air you breathed. It was all around, and you had to sort of infer. And having traveled out of India, I've been in the US for 22 years, it's given me the opportunity to reflect back and really understand the religion and tradition deeper than I would have had if I just lived in India. Because growing up, I grew up in New Delhi. It's a highly westernized city. Our thoughts are highly westernized. And so it's very difficult to not have a sort of one eye raised, supercilious, or some sort of skeptical view of the tradition, because that's what you think is the relation between religion and science. It's not so with Hinduism, but I would not have known better. But here we are. I'm reminded of this story every time I teach this class. It's a really interesting story that I'd like to tell you. Brahmin is not to scale. A Brahmin is someone who performs prayers and essentially you call them over, and well, Brahmin does several things, but one of their functions is to perform prayers. So one Brahmin goes from one village to another village to perform prayers, and as a gift, they give him a goat. And he's going to travel back in the evening through the jungle to his village. And so he slings the goat on his shoulder. He's off through the jungle. As he's about to exit the village, one villager says, "Hey, Brahmin, why are you carrying a calf on your shoulder?" And so the Brahmin looks at this guy like, "What are you saying, calf? This is the goat." Cool. All right, moves on, keeps walking. Turns another corner. He's about to hit the jungle. And another guy comes up and he says, "Hey, Brahmin, why are you carrying a baby donkey on your shoulder?" The Brahmin says, "Has this village got more than one village idiot here? What's going on? This is a calf, not a baby donkey. I don't know what you're talking about." Keeps walking, reaches the edge of the village, about to enter the jungle. Another guy comes up and says, "Hey, Brahmin, why are you carrying a dog on your shoulders? Dogs are unclean. You should not be carrying dogs." At this point, the Brahmin realizes exactly what was going on. This indeed was not a cow. This is a shape-shifting demon that has been given to him, and that demon's going to eat him in the jungle. And so he does exactly what he should. He throws the demon down and runs away into the jungle, right? And then the three crooks that wanted to have a good meal, dinner that day, get the goat and run away with it. And so what is the moral of the story? The moral of the story is, don't let the crooks tell you what's what, right? To know what you're carrying on your back, you got to look for it yourself. You got to trust what you have and not let the crooks tell you what's what. And that's my that's the reason I'm here to tell you about Hinduism and not a 19th century European scientist telling you what the heck Hinduism is, because, well, it's probably a shape-shifting demon. All right, Hinduism, we know it as Sanatana Dharma. I will tell you what that means. It is a living and breathing system. It is not merely something that you read about in history books or in a world religion books. It's a living and breathing system. It is a connection to the past. If you've ever been to a reunion or ever gone back home after many years, you sort of enter this time warp where your relations with your friends are the same as they were 20, 30 years ago. Time does not seem to matter, right? Hinduism is your bridge to what the world of the Celts, the world of the Egyptians that built the pyramids, to the world of the Roman Empire before they converted, the pagan philosophers. Hinduism is you're looking directly into those time zones through a living and breathing tradition. It's like a time warp. And that's why the things I'm going to show you, the things I'm going to talk about, Greek philosophy was always talking to Hindu philosophy. And in that sense, you'll hear a lot of those things, but you'll hear them and see them in a lived tradition, not as something that you only hear about in antiquity. And that's why it's important to just engage with Hinduism, because it's so much fun to do that time travel. But hey, don't take my word for it. European reduction, do take my word for it. European reductionism is absurd at the core. It mixes, and thank you for that question, it mixes culture, history, precedents, and prejudices, and then gives it one name. It's sort of like this scene from the, what's this movie now? Pirates of the Caribbean. And this is a classic Hollywood trope of the Mexican standoff, everyone pointing guns at each other. One will survive. It's going to be Elizabeth Swann, I guess. I don't know. But the point is, Hinduism is described by these guys, the same civilizational genius, by the way, and you will hear a hint of irony in my voice, that goes goes west from Europe. Goes west from Europe. Same civilizational genius goes west from Europe, lands on a particular land, and finds people there and calls them Indians. Right? The same guys eventually find the Indians after having traveled around the world and then decide to give them their history. So the way you understand Hinduism isn't by looking at what what your Wikipedia entry from Max Muller says. That's completely useless. You have to go see for yourself. That's what we're doing here today. All right, with that rant aside, I'm going to pause again, see if I have any responses from you, and then we get into a little bit of theory lessons, and then I promise I will answer your questions. Any questions, comments, feedback? Are you having fun? If you're not having fun, then, we need to change our class plan. Or as the t-shirt from my HR guy used to say, beatings will continue until morale improves. So if you're not having fun, I'm going to keep doing more of this. All right, let's talk about the core tenets of Hinduism. What do Hindus believe? Do we have a credo or a belief system? Well, alas, Hindus do not have a credo. We do not have a a thing that we need to recite 20 times a day, but we do have a few things we believe in. But first, what is Sanatana Dharma? I'd like you to think about a wheel that's moving, a wheel that's moving around an axle. And there are 2 points of interest. One point of that wheel is the point of the wheel that's in contact with the floor, right? Always moving, always a new point in contact with the floor, always changing. And then there's another point of the wheel that's never changing, and that's the center of the wheel. Just keep that analogy in mind as I begin to describe Hinduism. The word Sanatana means that which is outside of time, that which never changes. If something is true on Tuesday, false on Wednesday, true again on Thursday, is it even true? Right? Anything that changes with time is not true. So what is that which is outside of time? The knowledge of that is called Sanatana. Sanatan means never changing. Dharma, on the other hand, is ever changing. What is the right thing to do at this particular time depends on the space, the place, the time, the context of the event and so on. And so dharma is like the edge of the wheel that's always touching, always moving, always very subtle. It's never the same, right? And this paradoxical combination of the timeless and the timely is Sanatana Dharma, of truth with a capital T and truth with a small t. Everything is included in this understanding of Sanatana Dharma. And in that sense, it covers the beginning and the end of every sort of knowledge there is. Everything that we know, everything we learn about Hinduism, about the world, the universe, and the spiritual world, everything is contained in it. It is not an exclusionary principle. It is, in fact, all-inclusive. And that's just the name. The religion is called Hinduism. It's practiced by over 1 billion people. But the practices of Hinduism, you're going to see, are quite familiar. And so from a Hindu point of view, to answer your question, if you look at someone who's Buddhist or following a dharmic tradition, you're one of us. And the Hindu outlook to Buddhism is actually not a negative outlook. And in general, Hindus can be, and you will see that, can include any form of deity. You have one God, zero God, no God, many God, billions of gods. It doesn't matter what your conception of divinity is. Come on in. That's the Hindu approach. So it includes Buddhism, and the Buddha himself is seen as one of the 10 avatars of Vishnu. So we have, Hindus in general, culturally, there may be some issues here and there, but from a religious theological point of view, it's part of the same spectrum of belief systems. And you'll see that in the things I'm about to describe, you'll find not much disagreeing with your point of view as well. All right. On a quick tour of the ideas of Hinduism, I begin with, do I have infinity here? Somewhere. Okay, I'll keep going. All right, let's begin with time. The idea of time in Hinduism is quite interesting. Remember, I gave you the analogy of the wheel previously. Hindus understand that there are seasonalities. There is season. There's fall right now, for example. There's no activity, plants die off, and then from the seed, a new plant is born next year. We understand the coming and going of seasons, and we understand the coming and going of time. We do not have a linear time that begins in a nothingness and ends in sort of infinite heaven or hell. That is not our conception of time. Our conception of time is cyclic. Our stages of epochs are also cyclic, and we're always cycling through. Even this creation is part of a breathing in and out of creation and dissolution. So our sense of time is cyclic. And that is important because it changes the way we look at how the world works, who we are, and how are we to conduct ourselves. Because when you're no longer dealing with infinite heaven or hell type decisions, you live the life differently. You understand, and you have a lot more patience for, and peace with the way of the world. So this sense of time is built into the deep ends, crevices of Hinduism. All right. Next is zero. The idea of zero itself. Now, you might think zero is a pretty obvious thing. How's that anything? Mathematics, like your question, Kaylin, on Ayurveda yoga, mathematics is not free from the clutches of Hinduism. It turns out Hindus, some of the greatest mathematicians, Pingala, Aryabhatta, they are, they're very deep mathematicians. And the idea of zero itself, of course, the Buddha talks about shunyata, right? Nothingness. And this staring at the void of nothingness and thinking of it as its own state of being, and therefore the idea of a sifar or a zero, it's a product of the same philosophical thought. We understand nothing as a concept. And this is alien to the Western mind. Quite till recently, some European philosophers said, you don't need it. Well, they now didn't have a zero because, of course, no one goes to buy a zero fish, right? But if you try to do math with Roman numerals, you wouldn't go too far. But the Hindus, because we had a zero, the Hindu numeral system was a far more efficient numeral system, which is what we used. And then so when the Arab traders, Hindus were great sea people, great traders. And then later when the Arab traders were doing a lot of trading, because the Europeans were not trading at the time, the Arab traders came to India, learned the system, and that's why you see them as Arabic numerals, because that's who brought that over to Europe. But the zero is a part of the Hindu thought, and our understanding of the universe itself is deeply influenced by our understanding that zero is nothing and everything simultaneously. And that understanding is how it becomes a part of the number system. It's a philosophical and religious concept, not merely a mathematical one. Well, since we've talked about zero, let's divide by zero and talk about infinity. Now, infinity, because we were talking about food earlier, I'm going to actually play a Nobel Prize winning speech, if with your permission, and it'll be fun, I promise. Let's see, hold on. Let me share with sound. I'm going to stop sharing and try to share this time with sound. It will be, what am I doing? Are you seeing something? Are you seeing what I'm seeing? Do you see my screen? Affirmative. Yeah. Okay, good. All right, let's hear the speech. This is the year, I think 2016 or 17. Watch this speech.
I will start by explaining to you a concept from the citation that might not be familiar to you, and that's the concept of topology. So I brought my lunch, and here you see, it's a cinnamon bun. Here I have another thing. I have a bagel, okay? And here I have a pretzel. It's a Swedish pretzel with 2 holes in it. Now, for us, these things are very different. This is sweet, this is perhaps salty, different shapes, etc. But if you are a topologist, it's only one thing that is really interesting with these things in which they differ. This thing has no hole. The bagel has 1 hole. The pretzel has 2 holes. The number of holes is what the topologist would call a topological invariant.
All right. Now, what he's saying, I'm going to mansplain what he's saying, is that there are no fractional holes. You can get 0 holes, 1 hole, 2 holes, but never 1.25 holes, right? And you can fold 1 hole and get 2 holes, not 2 half holes. And that is really important. The concept of infinity in the Hindu tradition is the same. Now, why do you care? This is not a mathematical concept alone. The verse right after, in one of the Upanishads, I think this is the first verse, it begins as follows. I'll chant it for you. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om, this is full, that is full. And from this fullness, if that fullness is taken, fullness still remains. it's an exploration of infinity. And it's also an understanding that the fullness, you do not feel like an incomplete person, do you? You feel like you're a full person. But when you were inside your mother's womb, your mother felt a full person as well. And from her fullness, you were born, and you are both full. And her mother as well. And going all the way back to the original being, there is a chain of fullness that we have inherited all the way from the source of the being, our being, which is we feel complete. And yet the source from which we come from also is complete. We are not separated from the creator. We are still within the creator. We're a part of the creation itself. And yet, so we do not feel incomplete. And yet there is a sort of incompleteness that we do experience. And we try to fulfill it by eating, by having sex, by acquiring money. We try to fill our bellies to become complete again. And that drives us to crazy. So it turns out both the fullness and the lack of fullness are inherited from this chain of being. And that understanding of infinity is what shapes our religion. The names of the gods come and go, but our understanding of our relationship with the Creator is consistent, that we are not separated from the creation. Our Creator is not a potter that makes the wheel or the pot, and then the pot and the potter are two different things. No, we are also made of the same creation. The Creator is unfolded out into the world outside that we see from our eyes, and the Creator is the source. He illuminates our consciousness as our own self. And this understanding of the infinity outside and inside is a deep and core part of the Hindu tradition. All right. Now, since we were talking about food and you've already got your breads, let's talk about avocado. If you buy, yes, Astrid, yes, you have a question. I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to take your question. I apologize.
Yeah, no problem.
Yes.
I have a question about that. How do you relate that to the wholes?
The wholes themselves?
Yeah.
I see the wholeness with the W. Again, I have an Indian accent, so the W doesn't show up, but the wholeness and the wholeness are both interesting. I see my own self. I feel complete, and that there's something in me that I want to close, that drives me nuts because I'm trying to finish that out. If only I had more money, I'd feel more complete. If I only had more power, I'd feel more complete. And that drive is what makes me go around the world and consume. The yogic practice of Hinduism is to stop that drive and understand that the source of this fullness is within. And then once the understanding settles down and we truly understand the way the universe works, then each of us becomes a Buddha, an awakened one, because we now understand that the universe is actually one. We are one with it. We're not separated from it. That's my understanding of the HOLE whole and the WHOLE, that we are part of the wholeness. We misidentify as our individual selves. We remember our names and form, and even though in our own selves we know that the cute little baby that I was when I was born, I feel it's the same me, but the body it's not the same. Surely I wasn't this size when I was born, and certainly I was cuter when I was born, right? But here I am. And so I feel a sense of continuity, and yet I feel this sense of change, right? And we think that we exist somehow. We must have this name and form. We identify with this name and form, even though, like I just said, the form keeps changing, and we think, oh, it's still me, right? But that's the way I interpret this sense of incompleteness that drives us crazy. I hope I've confused you, Astrid, with that answer.
No, that's great. I'm actually thinking about it. I had never thought of it in that way. So I'm just contemplating because with the wheel, I had never thought of this until you just shared that. But one way I'm thinking about it right now, just based on what you shared, is that you could see one way to look at it is the center of the wheel is infinity,
Yes.
is that fullness. And then where it touches the ground would be a hole with an H.
Mm-hmm.
So you will constantly have, let's say, an emptiness. that then we're actually filling with specific time and place. But I had never thought of it until you shared the Nobel Prize video. I mean, there's a lot of ways I know you could look at it, but I just was struck by that, so I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack.
Thank you.
Thank you for
It's
sharing.
really beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. Onward to avocado. So have you had the joy of buying avocados at Costco? If you have you tried to smuggle it through the airport? Because then it could legally be seen as a lethal weapon, because those things are rock solid. Right? You could hurl them at somebody and hurt them with the grenade that you're hurling at them. And yet, a couple of weeks, maybe 6 weeks later, you leave it out and eventually it ripens. I have this question for you, a non-trivial question. Who ripens the avocado? There a Bluetooth signal or a Wi-Fi connection that it needs that, from the great cloud above, it says, hey, it's time to ripen, it's time to go. Who ripens the avocado? I don't need an answer to that. It's a rhetorical question, of course, but think about the question. There is an order to the universe. The universe is not at all that random. There is some sense of order. You plant a seed and a tree comes out and a fruit comes out and a seed comes out of that and a tree comes out of that and so on. There is order to this universe. And the search for this order is the beginning of Hinduism. The earliest hymns in the Hindu tradition that we know of are those hymns that look at this inherent order in the universe and questions, where is this coming from? What is the nature of this order? These are not investigations into God. It's simply investigations into, there seems to be cyclicity. The stars go around in a particular pattern. The sun and the moon go around in a particular pattern. The planets are doing their predictable thing. The plants are, the animals are. How is it? What is the source of this order? What is the nature of this order? Right? It's not always the same. It isn't a rule-bound, hide-bound order, but a very dynamic kind of order. And I will bring this thought up later in a couple of slides, but think about this sense of order. And that's the initial, you go back to the Rig Veda, the earliest hymns we remember, could be 5, 7, 10,000 years ago. And my ancestors, possibly yours as well, are thinking, what is the nature of this order? And then they ask from where that comes from. And then the answer, we do not know. No one can tell. This sense that there is order is what they were using as the sense of sniffing around and saying, what's behind this? What's behind this? And that's how we arrive at Hinduism, not by positing a God, 60 miles in the sky, big beard, angry, and sometimes sending around thunder, sometimes water. No, that's all good. But what is the nature of this order? What makes everything work? What makes the avocado ripen? That is, if they had avocados back then, but you get the idea. All right, and that is a very important question in the Hinduism, because it does not begin with an axiomatic belief, asking you to believe a credo, in a particular kind of God. It begins to just investigate the nature of the universe itself, and then arrives at the conclusion of our understanding of divinity, which again I will cover in a couple of slides. Now, I asked you a high school question. Pardon my bringing up of these old wounds, but would you please answer for me, why is a leaf green? Give me any answer. All answers are good. Seth.
Because chlorophyll is green?
Yes, great answer. Yeah, we're 10 points to Gryffindor for that. Emily.
Photosynthesis.
Photosynthesis, even better. Fantastic, great answers. Anything else? Any physics class people? Because it absorbs all the colors and it radiates out the green color. That's why we see it as green. Now, here's my question to you. If you gave your photosynthesis answer in the physics class, what are you going to get on that question? Well, the answer to that is a couple of slides ago. You're going to get a 0, because the answer, it absorbs the wrong colors and gives the right color. If you gave your physics answer in the chemistry class, what would you get? You'd also get a 0, because they're expecting here to hear chlorophyll and photosynthesis and not your color absorption theory in that sense, right? The thing is, mathematicians and zealots in one right answer. Because the math we are taught tells us that there's one right answer. Zealots think that there's one right answers. But if you're neutral to physics and biology, you kind of know that both answers are right. It depends on who's asking, right? Do you agree with me? That's exactly the position of Hinduism. How do I say that? Because, of course, another scientist, Niels Bohr, said, there are trivial truths, and then there are great truths. The opposite of a trivial truth is plainly false. But, highlight alert, the opposite of a great truth is also true. You go back to the wheel and the Sanatana Dharma that I talked about. We're looking for something that's true, not for something that's trivial, right? And that's why in the Rig Veda, again, I talk about this Rig Veda, there is a phrase, just focus on these words. This is just the proof of that. The truth is one. Ekam sat vipra bahudha vadanti. The truth is one. The wise know it by many names. Only zealots go out with the view that the truth is one, and if you don't understand or agree with my truth, then you're going to be sent to eternal hell, or you go into whatever, something's wrong with you, or you must have to pay taxes or die. You only stop at that if you're a zealot or a mathematician. The wise know it by many names. This is core to Hinduism. The name of the god, you make up. And so in a Hindu altar, you might see, and this is completely not unusual until now when social media has made us all angry, you could see images of deities that don't belong to Hinduism. Buddha, zero problems, of course. Buddha's in the family, but even Jesus, you could find Jesus, Mother Mary, Mother Teresa, whatever. You can find these in your altar. It's not a problem. Why? Because the truth is one, but the wise know it by many names. Even as I show you this verse in Sanskrit with English transliteration, these names of the divinity, Indra, Mitra, Varuna, Agnim, right? Garutman, these are not common names of the deities that we look at today. These we know as the names of the deities, but these are not the commonly used deity names now. It doesn't make any difference. That's why there's an openness to Hinduism, to these ideas. The only problem is that we obviously Hinduism comes from a world that has not dealt with this one-way sort of ticket type situations where you say the truth is one, and then if you're not in the truth, then you're eternal hellfire or whatever. We're not used to that interaction, and so if you come to us and bring us your deity, and we say we'll bow to your deity, we don't have a problem. Where there's 33, I can do one more. But then we realize that it's a sort of a one-way ticket, right? You can enter, but you can't exit from that. And that reduces the total amount of divinity that we're used to. Because to us, the entire universe is divine. Why just one name? What appeals to my heart will be different from what appeals to your heart. So why limit yourself to this one? And that's an interesting conversation to be had with people that are Hindu and people that are not. All right, moving right along. People in India in general, this is a Pew Research, in general believe in many of the same things. It turns out the people of India in general believe in a few things that I'm going to let you read. They believe in karma. They believe in reincarnation, in fate, right? Or benevolent spirits, of course. And then, of course, here's the question. This is not from Pew Research, by the way. The conditions at birth dictate the key facets of our life. So if the conditions of birth are random, how tall I'm going to be, how good looking I'm going to be, whether I'm going to have hair at middle age or not, these are all determined at birth, right? Those are the conditions of my birth, and a lot of my life is shaped by them. If those are random, then all of life must be random, is it not? Right? And then why the heck am I trying to optimize the 5% that is not random? Right? Hindus don't think anything is random. And the only way you can do that is by believing twice in karma and in reincarnation, because what goes around does come around. It'll just come around to you in the next life. It's all good, right? That's how we look at karma and reincarnation. All right. Death and rebirth. As a caterpillar, having come to the end of one blade of grass, draws itself together and reaches out for the next. So the self, with a capital S, having come to the end of one life and dispelled all ignorance, gathers in his faculties and reaches out from the old body to a new. We believe in rebirth and reincarnation. We believe life goes on. And this gives us tremendous peace. We are not awaiting a one single judgment and eternal hellfire. We know that the process of spiritual evolution goes on. It goes on. And we're always doing the work. That's how Hindus look at it. All right, I'll tell you another story just for fun. Why so many gods is a question, and I'm going to take you to the temple, as you can see those queued up. Why so many gods and divinity? I'm reminded of this amazing documentary on Pakistani immigrants that own large buildings or large homes in Pakistan. There was this one interview that caught my attention. Very interesting interview. Let me just stop the sharing so you can stare at my face while I talk once again. Here we are. Okay. So in this interview, this gentleman is, he went out as an illegal immigrant to some other country. I think he went to Sweden, and he went by road, and he was an illegal immigrant in the 1970s. And he said, for the first 6 months, I was really afraid because the police was out to get me. The police was out to get me in the bus stop, at the post office, on the streets. The police was everywhere. They were trying to get me. But then he says the following. He says, everyone looked the same, whether they're a bus driver, a traffic warden, or a hotel porter. Anyone in uniform looked like a cop to me. But when you begin to see with accustomed eyes, all forms of God don't look the same. There is a form of God that we identify as the mother because we feel a sort of a relation of being born to her, of energy that animates us and separates our living body from the dead body, an intelligence that illuminates our consciousness, of a sense of creation that pervades everything. These are not all the same, would you agree? And when you begin to see with accustomed eyes, you begin to tell the difference. And then you think of them in personified forms, as the mother goddess, or the god of meditation, or the god of creation and sustenance. These are all just ways of understanding divinity and not understanding that it's not all just the same. It's not just, you just begin to understand the nuances with which the Creator works through us. And so Hindu tradition, because it continues from the time of and before the Egyptians were building the pyramids, we have a deep understanding. Our eyes are really accustomed to this sense of divinity. And that's how we celebrate divinity. It isn't that you go to a Shiva temple or a Vishnu temple or whatever. You understand that all creation is one. But these forms of God remind us of some or the other aspect of divinity and allows us to connect deeper with that form of divinity. It is said in one of the Upanishads, a father and son are talking, and the son is filled with the education that only the newly educated have, that I know everything. And so he comes home and he says to my father, "Father, I have learned everything." And his father, a wise man, says, "All right, if you have learned everything, do you know the thing from which everything might be known?" And he says, "What is that kind of knowledge? What is the thing from which everything can be known?" And then comes this very famous verse, which is, "If you know also that which is made of gold." We understand that each of us are separate. We see ourselves as separate human individualities. But if you know the Creator, if you know the creation and this dance that is underway, then you know everything in creation. You don't just know the particulars. You know also the source of those particulars. And that's what you must investigate. I'm beginning to bring this whole thing into a close now. Newton famously said, this is of course Chartres. So Newton famously said, if I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giant. That's the Chartres giant as far as I know. And so cultures learn multi-generationally. You don't just have a spark of genius. You have to build on previous genius generation after generation after generation. The problem with that is it takes a lot of generations to even invent a new word, a new way of seeing things. Then you have to transmit it. But the highest insights about the subtlest of realities, how do you transmit it to everyday people? That's a challenge, which is a civilizational challenge. Subtle realities are not everyday experience. If I tell you that the world itself is unreal, Maya, I can tell you that because this is my direct experience even as I speak. But do you need to buy it? You don't need to buy it. Do you agree with it? No. Does it make a difference to your reality? No. How are you to learn from somebody else's learning is the question that every civilization has to think. That becomes a civilizational project. But I'll tell you one way cultures learn. Have you heard of the phrase duck? What is this? Duck and cover, right? Duck and cover is obviously a famous phrase, and it reminds you of a very famous science equation. Can someone tell me what that equation might be? Okay, duck and cover is a reminder of the nuclear bomb that's about to go around somewhere. Where does a nuclear bomb actually come from? From Einstein's famous E equals mc squared, right? Now, if I tell you E equals mc squared, you and I are not physicists. We have not the capability to build and test atomic bombs, right? But that knowledge must still be transmitted because people need to know how to use that to save themselves. And so for everyday students, duck and cover is the E equals mc squared of the people. Through stories, through aphorisms, through memes, and yes, laws, these highest findings are transmitted. And so the Hindu transmission has also been done in ways that now appear cultural or mathematical or biological, but they're all part of this system of finding and transmission. But not all transmissions last. There are zealots everywhere, and all societies have zealots that have gone around burning libraries and institutions or breaking down buildings. Accumulated wisdom is lost when truths are lost. Sacking, pillaging, burning. The one truth zealotry has burnt the library at Ephesus, has destroyed the great university at Nalanda, or the Buddhas at Bamiyan in Afghanistan. One truth zealotry wants to obliterate all the truths that are found, and this accumulated wisdom is lost with it, right? And that's the loss to humanity, because it takes civilizations, generations of effort to arrive at this beauty, at this purity of truth. And then with one fire, you've burnt everything down. The Hindu tradition travels through the stories, through the celebrations, through our heroes, our gods, our art, and high philosophy. These are all ways of transmitting high philosophy to everyday people. Our festivals celebrate the passage of time, the states of life. Our heroes are people that have had high moral stances and taken high moral decisions. Our gods represent aspects of divinity that we wish to bring into our own life. Our festivals celebrate and mark these passages with a lot of color. I would tell you that riots of color are any day better than having riots, period. Hinduism is a celebration of life itself. This, of course, is the famous Maharshi ashram in Rishikesh. I did not take this photo, but I've been to this spot all the time. This is where this is the famous Beatles ashram in Rishikesh. But through the yoga, through this art, through high philosophy, through these festivals, all of these are deeply soaked into the philosophy and tradition of Hinduism, including being spiritual but not religious. You don't need to believe in a million gods or three gods or one god or any god at all. You could be absolutely a disbeliever in any form. You could be an atheist and you'd still be accepted into Hinduism, because that's the spectrum that we work with. I'm a yogi and we have a deep spiritual culture. This is, of course, and I see on whose background am I seeing the Sri Yantra? Kaylin, I think that was in your background. I saw the Sri Yantra. Yes. Oh, now you moved, but yeah. But deep spiritual culture, the practices, the philosophy, and the pluralism practice in Hinduism is exactly what you would expect from a spiritual but not religious system. We do not have a source of authority. We have many sources of authority, but you are your own authority. And that's the important part. Okay, now let me answer a few questions. And new might have popped up. Let me get to that. The sound of Om. This is your question. I'm going to begin in sort of chronological sequence, Scott. Om, it has 4 parts. There's a whole Upanishad that talks about Om, but Om is a very revered symbol. It has 4 parts to the sound, 3 of which are audible, and the 4th is the silence that underlies all of this and stays at the end. So those sounds, I will chant it for you and see if you can catch the resonances in your own self as you hear it. Om is the source of all there is. It is the refuge into which we all subside. Om is a visual, an oral heard form of divinity, of creation itself. Om is a sacred symbol for that reason. It isn't just a word in Sanskrit or something we say. It is all creation itself. And Om is, of course, very sacred as a sound, as a symbol of all that is sacred to us. So I hope I've answered your question. Emily, your question is the presence of protection in Hinduism. If you followed the Celts or the Celtic runes, right, a lot of them have protection. Protect my arm, protect my shoulders, protect my head, the ears, the back of the head. The Celts have it, the Hindus, you will find, I can find you Sanskrit verses that are practically the exact same thing. Hindus have that's why we invoke divinity. Shields are created, in Sanskrit, kavach, it's called kavach. So you would invite divinity and invoke divinity to protect you from all directions, because you want to be safe and protected, right? For this highest of act, which is understanding the true nature of divinity. And the protection mantras play a big role. Protection amulets and signs are very important. This itself, this red thread is called Raksha, and this is typically found conventionally when you're doing a religious ceremony, then they will tie this on your hand to protect you, and so on. You'd also have the tika on the forehead as a means of doing that as well. Of course, rings and amulets all the time for protection. So, and then there are yantras that you have for protection as well, like the yantra we saw on Kaylin's wall. That's a Sri yantra. That's a prosperity yantra. But there are protective yantras that are out there. These are geometrical shapes with numbers inside them. Very, very powerful. And they have mantras inside them. But the good ones, obviously the ones that work have been imbued with those specific religious, spiritual power. It's not something you print off the internet. So they have to be empowered, so to speak. So Emily, I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
Sure. The religious versus culture. I think that's a phraseology some of the young Hindus might be picking from their Jewish friends, where they might say, I'm a cultural Jew, but not an observant Jew. In Hinduism, it's not that you have to follow the law, right, or the Torah. That's not, you're not keeping Sabbath. Those are not things that Hindus are doing. You're a Hindu, all of you could be Hindu if you feel like it, right? Because what is Hinduism? I'm Hindu in the same way that Plato was a Greek philosopher. He happened to be a Greek who happened to to follow a certain school of philosophy that was the Greek philosophy. You're a Hindu if you understand the universe to be the way I've just described it. It's timeless and it varies in time, that you're one with the Creator. The Creator has a benign and loving presence, but can also have a very angry presence at times, depending on how the universe is working at that particular point. The culture part of Hinduism, can you be a cultural Hindu and not a religious Hindu? Like I said, it's hard for me to tell you what a religious Hindu is because there isn't a definition. Seth, you're saying something. You had this expression, which was, I thought
Oh, sorry. No, I was just leaning and resting my hands
you're bracing
on the chair.
I thought you were doing this. I thought, well, that sounds like an emoji.
I can see how you would think that.
All right. So in the Hindu tradition, the religious part, because there are, you're not required. By the way, I'm an interfaith speaker. I get called to give interfaith talks. And in the first couple of years, I'm naive and stupid. So I go in and they're like, which temple do you go to? And stupidly, I tell them, this is the temple I go to. And they think, okay, this is the temple you go to. I thought nothing of it until they started telling me I belong to this church or this particular stake or whatever. And then light bulb moment, I realized that you actually just go to that one church. You don't go to the other churches, which in the Hindu tradition is bizarre. You're like, what temple do you go to? I go to all of them, right? I go to a temple, any temple you send me, I will go there, right? Buddhist temples as well. It's the same. I'll go, light the incense there. I'd even go to a church, and even at church, I want to take my shoes off outside because it's a holy place, right? It makes no difference to me, right? So if you're observant, religious, I don't know what a religious Hindu is, to be honest, right? I say this with no sense of irony because there is no one authority that or there is no profession of faith that I must adhere to become a part of the inner circle, that sort of stuff. That's not generally the case in Hinduism. So if you're a cultural Hindu, you're also a religious Hindu, TBH. That's how I would say. It's not maybe the answer you want, but it's all I got. Okay. As for pejorative portrayals of Hinduism, so when you're setting something up and articulating your philosophy, you almost always have to do it with respect to the other, because you have to explain your position. And you have to say, I'm next to this building and this other building, I'm in the middle of them, right? And therefore, in philosophy, you always have to define yourself against the standard of the time. And you remember how I began by talking, smack about European historians, right? Or Hollywood. I'm just doing that as a way to signpost and tell you I'm not there, I'm somewhere else. Right? I don't mean them ill will. I'm just telling you that I'm not in that. I'm on the other side. So Hindus don't think poorly of Buddhism at all. For us, Buddhism is part of the spectrum of the same beliefs as Hinduism. And a lot of my friends are, I myself, I go to the Buddhist monasteries all the time, and we have no sense of otherness when we go there because there are people. The philosophies are identical. The shapes and names of your divinity might look different, but that's neither here nor there. It doesn't change away from the ultimate reality that we are all after. Hindus don't have a negative view of Buddhism, except now there's some sort of because the need to create schisms. So one branch of Hinduism, Sikhism is being separated out, and they say telling them you're different and whatever. And Buddhism is being separated out. Hindus in general don't have that view. I'd go to Sikh temples just as well as I'd go to mine. I revere the Sikh gurus as much as I revere mine because they say the things that, same things. They're not any different, right? And so that's the sort of Hindu point of view. We don't need to poo-poo Buddhism to stand on our own ground. We don't have to do that. Alan Watts famously said that Buddhism is Hinduism packaged for export. So and I add to that by saying that mindfulness is Buddhism repackaged for further export, right? Because essentially you're reducing it down to some essential principles so that you remove the god, you remove the rituals, you got something, then it can travel, but it's not just as sweet. So that's my take. All right. I hope that was fine, Lishan. I didn't want to offend anyone, but since you've asked, I'm giving you a direct answer. Okay. What kind of support, Laura, your question was, what rituals at the end of life? I will cover that in part 3 because I will cover to that. And the link to Ayurveda and yoga. The link to Ayurveda is the same as my link to my mother, which is there's no difference. It's just, essentially it's a continuity. There's no break between Ayurveda, yoga, and Hinduism, as you want, because Ayurveda itself comes at reality in the same sense, right? It's the science of life, of elongating life or prolonging life, and that science cannot be different from life itself. The project of yoga, I'm a yogi, the project of yoga is the merging of the lower self with the higher self. That's the project of Hinduism. There are many paths to this. There's the path of meditation. There's the path of devotion. There's the path of action. And all of those are ways of engaging with and merging back into divinity. And they're all acceptable. Whether postural yoga is or is not Hinduism, I think Western yogis want to separate out sometimes the identity and so on. Hindus in general, there's no, we have no problem. We understand from which this comes. And to us, postural yoga, you see my yoga mat somewhere over there, my meditation mat behind me. It's part of your set of practices every day. You do postures in order to be able to sit. You sit in order to be able to meditate. You meditate in order to be able to engage in devotional communion or connection or joining together with the higher divinity that pulsates in my heart, sits in my heart, and acts through my being as myself. And that's the project of yoga. And so it's very intimately and directly connected. There is no separation at all. I think I've answered the questions thus far. Now I'm going to pause and see if you have questions or comments. Seth, you actually have your hand raised emoji up. So I'll let you ask.
Yes, this time I do actually have a question. And it may be something that you're planning to answer later on. So thinking back to my world religion class in high school, when we learned about Hinduism, everything was very focused on different deities, right? It was all about Brahman and Vishnu and Shiva and Ganesh and Hanuman and on and on. And everything that we have covered in both in our preparation for this course and then today is much more philosophical. And so I'm curious, this is a little bit repeating the question about cultural versus religious, but would you say that those deities are part of a Hindu practice, or would you say that they are sort of a cultural practice specific to different parts of India that are kind of separable from Hindu practice?
That's a great question. When I take you to the temple in part 2, I'll show you. The Hindu philosophy itself hides in plain sight. Hides in plain sight in the sense that there is a temple I used to go to with my father as a child. And I went back after like a couple of decades of not going there. On the walls are things that now, as a philosopher, I recognize. I never read those when I was a kid. I never saw them. I promise you. And then the things that we sing and chant, now they have new meaning, and that meaning has nothing to do with the meaning I knew as a child. Right? So in Hinduism, all philosophy is hidden in plain sight. That's the way it's designed. And it's crazy because you can't explain it to somebody else. There's a lot of nuance being packed into the tradition itself. The forms of the divinity that you saw, and I'll show you some of the names and forms of the divinity, are all beautiful articulation of our relationship with divine. And depending on which school you go down, you have different ways of arriving at the same ultimate truth. That is the part that is important for you to understand. They do not reach a different destination. They always reach the same destination, but how they go there is, this is the north face, this is the east face, this is the south face of the same mountain, but you get to the same top at the end. And so there's a lot of fluidity in that. I'll give you an example. In the 1900s, so last century, saints and sages are a big deal in the Indian tradition. You go to India, and by the way, if you've ever followed the Indian guru system, if you don't know what you're getting into, you're going to be even more confused when you get into it, because gurus come in all shapes and sizes and types. But anyway, to tell you that story, one of the gurus that's extremely popular in India right now, extremely, like his popularity is on a rise, like exponentially right now, is actually someone who was born and lived as a Muslim saint in a mosque. And so Hindus that revere him create the equivalent of the exact same mosque, and then they have statues for him, and then they revere this saint, right? It's completely fluid. There's so much fluidity going on here. It'll blow your mind. It does mine too. That's the way Hindu religion itself plays itself out. Ashrain, your question. Your hand is up.
Yes, please. On that topic, so there's been many instances of the import of Hinduism into the U.S., especially, yoga posture and all sorts of things like that, that it seems that many of the, how would you say, the people who came and brought and set up their ashrams and became fairly, how would you say, caught up in the material power struggle. And, there's many instances of those kind of ashrams and people who followed all over. And so when Hinduism meets Western materialism, it seems like it kind of implodes or explodes. And I'm thinking also about the way Westerners, and I've done this, uses the yoga postures, which in my background, they were meant very specifically for the bodies that they were created on. And when Westerners use them, we use them like, go out and lift weights and do your yoga. It's exercise. We got to do it. And I've hurt myself, so I don't do it anymore. So can you comment on any of that?
A lot of things packed inside. And let me see the ones I remember and I'll address. As Spider-Man's uncle famously said in his last words, with great power comes great responsibility, but with great power also comes great abuse. And as you get a lot of this power distance guru systems, and power distance is true for pretty much every religion, if you have a system that requires utmost submission to the guru, that great power can be a source of great release and relief to the members of that community, because that power animates that community, but can also set up ways of abuse and systems of abuse. And that happens in many Hindu guru systems as well, because it's designed with a sort of power structure that lends itself very readily to abuse. It turns out, who goes to ashrams? A lot of people that go to ashrams have some problems that they're trying to resolve. And because they have problems, they are I've seen this myself when I've stayed at ashrams, that people are looking for relief. Anyone who offers that relief, they will submit to. And that submission and power can be abused in the wrong hands, and is abused in the wrong hands. It's not a Western Eastern thing, it's just the way power works. The Hindu tradition does require total surrender to the guru, but also requires that you test the heck out of your guru before you taking your guru on. Because, with the wrong guru, total submission can be complete, abuse. And so you have to pick your guru carefully. And then you have to surrender completely, because you're essentially relying on the guru's the Guru is several rungs ahead of us in their accomplishment. So we can learn so much from them in their presence, in their words, in their behavior, that it's important to have that sort of reverence. But you have to be careful what you're getting into. I myself, I don't belong to any of the Guru systems because of that reason. Because anything that sounds like it's a power grab, I try to stay away from. That's just me. Your second question, you have to remind me, was the yoga and misuse of ideas, right? Right. The misuse of Hindu ideas, and this is not new. Even Plotinus or all the Greek philosophers were always also. This isn't the first time the Indians are meeting the West, right? This conversation is ongoing, and it's always created some sort of a great confluence of materialistic and spiritual thinking. And there's a lot of interesting things that come out of this, not all good. But appropriation of Hindu ideas is quite common and can be quite dangerous. I'll give you an example. If any of you is Jewish, know that I come in peace. But what is to us a sacred symbol, a madman in Europe makes it a symbol of hate. And now when I go to the temple to get my car blessed, cannot have a swastika on my car because I'll be seen as a skinhead anti-Semite, which I'm not. I shave because I'm bald, but I'm not by any means a hater of Jewish people. They're our friends. But the point is, someone steals my thing, and now that thing is given a bad name. I can't use it. Buddhist people can't use the swastika. The Jain people can't use the swastika. It's ridiculous, right? It's none of our fault. Why are you blaming my religious symbols for it? Go blame your own symbols for it. So Hindus have started a thing that, look, it's the Hakenkreuz, the crooked cross. It is not the swastika. Please call it by the original German name and spare the swastika if you don't mind. And that's the problem that comes with appropriation. You take ideas and you make a whole casserole out of it, and now it's a bad word, right? And this is pretty common because half-baked knowledge is terrible, is a terrible thing to have, to be honest. But it happens all the time. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying this is the way these things are. Did I answer? Yes, Kellen.
Just kind of expanding on that. So when you said that anyone can be Hindu, so when I found Ayurveda and yoga, it was like my whole world changed. I felt like just finally home. I was raised Jewish. I would say I'm culturally Jewish, although I've been reconnecting with that. But just everything about the science of life, and like I call myself a student of life, like it resonates so deeply within every single cell of my body. And so just hearing you say anyone can be a Hindu, it just feels really welcoming. And also there's that part of me that never wants to be appropriating and things like that. So there's that balance. And I guess I'm just wondering if you could speak to like the balance between appropriation and feeling at home in certain, we'll talk about Hinduism, if that makes sense.
Yeah. People use the language that they have, and they use the words that the culture receives. The word appropriation is a new word, and it's obviously I can give you a lot of outrage for appropriation, but I don't have any for outrage. I use the language of science because that's how I'm thinking. So I'm not appropriating science. I'm just using words and concepts from science. It's the same thing. These are concepts that you like, and you begin to use them as your own, and that's just your language. Hindus in general don't have a problem with it. I could froth myself into outrage if you like, but it's not the general response. These conversations are not new, and sure, you can take Hindu concepts and put them to bad use. You could, for example, this whole controversy about gas stoves. Fire is critical to who we are as human beings, and the connection with fire, as you'll see in the Hindu tradition as well, is innate in our biology. We are designed with fire in mind, right? And this connection, if you sever it, we are that much less human as a result, right? So where I'm going with that is I think this interaction is important. I think this interaction sometimes leads to poor outcomes, like what's happened with the swastika and so on. But most of the time, the interaction results in something even more wonderful that we can all appreciate. And that's the important part of this interaction. If I were to close the Hindu system down and say, oh, no, you can't use my words, then we can never have a conversation, because for us to talk, we must have previously negotiated words to exchange information with, right? If I say you can't use the word dhyana, go use your word meditation, I can never tell you that meditation and dhyana are two completely different things. I can't tell you because you don't know my words. I have told you not to use my words. I can't do that. For me to talk to you, we must have words that we can use, and words by words I mean, tools and grammar and so on. So yes, and Kailan, on your altar is a very Hindu-looking altar. I see Jesus there. I think that's Shiva, and I see Ganesha, and I think I see Ma Kali on your altar, and that's a very classic Hindu-looking altar, to be honest.
Yes, very much so.
All right, other questions or comments? We're going to take a 5-minute break otherwise, but questions, comments, feedback. How's this going? Is this going in the direction you wanted? All right. I usually rely on the cats to tell me, and the way I know in this class, I've done this class for many years, usually it's, the cat will walk on the keyboard, and that's how I know this is a good class. So otherwise, it's all good. All right, we're going to take a 5-minute break and let the cat rest behind Aspen, and then we'll be back at it's 3:19, so about 3:25 in Pacific time. Do your own math, and then we'll pick up from there. All right, so we're going to begin in a few more seconds. How are you? How are we doing? Are you getting what you wanted out of the session?
Yeah, this has been very, very helpful. So thank you so much. Really, really interesting. I've been a Buddhist for a long time, then kind of moved away from that, but it's really helpful to hear the connection and the openness of Hinduism. And one question I have related to that and what we're talking about, what does it mean to be Hindu? Is there like a conversion ceremony, or like what does it mean to be like, okay, wait, if you haven't grown up culturally as Hindu, what does that mean to become Hindu or to become considered part of the Hindu community?
Yeah. Now there are some people that have gone back, and because there's a demand for that sort of thing, created a ceremony. There isn't a ceremony. I mean, you can make things up to make yourself feel good. You're a Hindu if you feel like you're a Hindu. That's just pretty much all there is to it. You don't have to be born Hindu by any means. And if you buy into these ideas, then you're Hindu. That's just the way we look at it. And it's sort of open source in that sense, unfortunately. And maybe that's part of the fortunate part of it as well. It's not a proselytizing religion, because we have nothing to sell you, right? We're not. So that's been the challenge of the contact with proselytizing religions has been a net negative for Hinduism, because we're not trying to convert anyone. We're like, okay, come on over. But then we're trying to figure out how to respond to this market share grab mentality. Our approach has been, look, we're seekers after truth, and things that we have discovered to be truthful, we incorporate into our lives and make our lives better. And if you want to make your life better, we'll tell you what we learned, and you tell us what you learned, and we've both learned something new in that process. So even better. That's the Hindu approach. It doesn't work in a market share grabbing sort of religious marketplace, but now what I'm seeing is the sort of de-churching and the rise of nuns and so on is, I think people are done with sort of organized religion, but people are not done without connecting with the spiritual, without connecting with the community. And that's a hunger that's going to drive people nuts until they find an answer, because you can only shop around so much until you realize that you don't want another one of those storefronts. You want to belong, right? And how are you going to do that? The advantage of a conversion-oriented system is that it gives you a place of belonging right away. It's essentially a one-stop shop, right? And if you're shopping around, that's not good. But to other people, it gives you a sense of comfort and belonging instantaneously. You're in this bubble that you belong with. There's a lot good to be said of that model. The Hindu tradition does not work that way, and that I have a diagram, of course, you would imagine, to explain what's going on and why that's interesting from my Hindu's point of view, where I see our worlds colliding in very interesting ways. It's one of those peanut butter and jelly deals where these things are separate, you combine them together, something very interesting comes together when that happens. And I'll show you that in the diagram. But I'm seeing that the hunger for spirituality is not going to be satisfied. If you stop going to your church or your mosque or your whatever, it doesn't mean that you're not religious or that spiritual. You want to belong. You want to connect with the higher source of being. You want to have the numinous or the sacred have a space in your life because it's important to you. It feeds you. It feeds your spirit. But you want a way of accessing that, right? And maybe that one-stop shop wasn't your thing. But how else are you going to access that? The challenge that exists in the West is frameworks don't exist for people to get that, right? You have to belong to a community in order to get it. And the Hindus don't work that way. Hindus, the society itself is the community that you belong to, and then you belong to the society itself, not to a specific in-group or out-group and so on. So there's a lot to be said. I'll be more clear when I show you the diagram, but that's the broad sense of where I see the world heading right now, from my point of view. Any other questions or comments? All right, let's take a quick trip into a temple, because I'd like to show you a temple. Not all Hindus go to the temple all the time. Hindus are not required to go to a temple to belong to the Hindu tradition. You may never go to a temple, it's not a problem. But Hindus go to temples for some specific reasons. Most Hindus tend to have a small bit of altar or a sacred space inside their home where we light our candles, our tea lights in this case now, or our incense sticks, and there'll be an image of divinity out there, similar to the altar that we were seeing. And that's at home, and that's for your everyday practice. Because the entire universe is sacred, everything is sacred. And so trees will be sacred. The front and back of your home can also be sacred, will be, of course, sacred. So those are also places where you might have sort of some religious thing going on. For example, when I wake up, a part of my morning ritual is I have to offer water to the sun. This is early in the morning. And now if you follow Huberman from Stanford, you're going to say that's to get more sunlight into the eyes or whatever. That's scientific mumbo jumbo. But the practice is that you offer water to the sun, because the Gayatri mantra, which is one of the mantras, the consciousness that illuminates my intelligence, myself, is the same consciousness that illuminates everything, right? And I'm recognizing that by honoring the sun, by offering the sun water. What is it? It's just water, right? But what I'm asking for is that may your light illuminate my consciousness and the world that I participate in. And so that's a sacred thing. Again, no need to go to a temple for that sort of thing. But people do. We have sacred spaces, and the temples play a very important part in the Hindu community in general, for reasons of being stores of places for us to get together, for places where cultural and religious activities can happen, for us to meet the gods in a particular place. Gods, we know, are everywhere in our heart, but we go to a specific place, and I'll show you that. Your hand is up, Emily.
Oh, yes. Maybe just briefly, could there be different forms of that type of illumination? Like you, the water for sun. Someone might also offer something else to the sun or an element.
Sure, yeah, all the time. There are different ways of doing it. So you could offer, in the Gita, there's a famous verse that says you could offer, water, fruit, a leaf, or or flowers, right? To God. You could offer anything to God. The spirit of offering is, because what is water? It's available everywhere, it's flowing, right? You're offering, the point is the spirit of coming with a spirit of offering, because you're always taking. It's time to offer. And this sense of self-sacrifice is the thing that's being asked for. It isn't the thing itself. It could be money, gold. You'll see, I'll show you the temple, a lot of gold, a lot of silver, right? But the sense of self-sacrifice is what's being invoked here. Okay, so like I was saying, you don't need to go to a temple, but temples are sacred spaces, and we visit the temple. Some Hindus, depending on who they are, may go on a certain day of the week, or certain days, like you were asking, certain days of the year, because it's a special day. Hindus follow both a lunar and a solar calendar, and so depending on what's going on, there's a lot of different things. We are tracking the lunar cycle very, very actively, very shockingly actively, and of course the solar calendar and the stars. And so we're tracking all of these, and different days result that are important. And people go on different days of the week, sometimes different days of the year, sometimes, but you find your excuse to go to the temple. I'll give you a new secular religious day that has been invented in the United States. It will surprise you that the holiest of days, by that I mean the most footfall at the Hindu temple that I'm about to show you, is on a very, very sacred day of January 1. Now, January 1 is not like a holy day in the Hindu tradition, but it is the most frequent day. The footfall at this Hindu temple is so much that we have to hire agencies to manage the traffic. We have to bus people out from traffic, from parking lots from like 2 miles out. There's a lot of footfall. And it is not on the lunar or solar calendar, it's just on the Georgian calendar. But hey, we'll find an excuse to go to the temple. It's all good. Now, what is a temple? A temple is a sacred space to be with the divine, and they are places where the divinity lives. And now I'm going to double click on that so I explain to you exactly what you're about to see. We are here invoking a certain mood of abundance, of reverence, of sacrifice, of belonging and connection. That's the spirit we wish to invoke. Everything you're going to see will be to these ends. It's designed, or collectively it's made to create that sense, that feeling, that mood of surrender, of abundance, of purity and beauty. Because ours is by no means a sparse or a dry religion, by no stretch of imagination. Abundance, beauty, variety, color, smells, sounds, they're all very important in the Hindu tradition. I will show you each one of them, but they all evoke a certain spirit of engagement, of celebration, of connection. And how do you do that is the point of going to the temple. So the temple is the house of the divine. And I don't mean that as in this is the house of God kind of thing. No, it is literally, it is set up, the temples are set up that we have essentially through artifice, and I don't say that in quotes way, through artifice, we have said, oh, one that is everywhere, I invite you to come and reside here so I may offer my prayers to you. Now, where have you heard this one before? I hope you enjoy math, because I'm going to take you back to middle school math classes. Let there be an x such that 2x plus c is equal to y or something, right? And you solve for the x, and in the end, the x disappears, right? Only the answer remains. That's the same thing that you're doing at the temple. You're inviting divinity to reside in a form that is dear to you, that is vibrant, and that reminds you of that divine form. You invite them to come live here so you may offer your prayers to them. Because I tell you this, can I ask you, and you tell me hand on heart, can you tell me, I love the universe? Are you ever going to wear a t-shirt that says, I love the universe? It's kind of tough. You want to hug the universe, but it has no arms and legs to hug, right? There is no connection to the heart in this heartless universe of yours that we speak of, right? You want to feel that love. You want to feel that connection, right? How do you do that? In a place where storms have names and hurricanes have names. If Hurricane Rita is coming, what does that mean? Hello, Laura child. So why does the hurricane have a name? Does the hurricane care if it has a name or not? You don't care. It doesn't care. It's going to do whatever the heck it's doing, right? You care for it because you may know that Rita is coming, right? Or Katrina is coming, or what have you, whatever names you have for your hurricanes, right? It's the same. That which cannot be named must yet have a name so that we may talk about that, right? Must have a form so we can talk about it. The market went up today. The markets were down today. The markets are angry. What is this market that you speak of? Right? Why do we anthropomorphize or whatever? Why do we think of them in sentences as humans? Because that's how we think as humans. We anthropomorphize everything. The universe loves us. The universe wants this to happen, right? Right? That's how our sentences are constructed, because that's how our grammar is, because that's how our brains are wired. We think of everything in human terms. So why must God be spared this disconnection? We must also think of God in human terms, because that's the only thing we understand. If I tell you that universe is 96% dark matter, what are you going to do with that? You can't see, touch, feel, taste, or sense that dark matter. So what difference does it make to you? Right? So you want to know God. You want to connect with God. You have to think of God. And again, I say this, in any other religion, this would be heresy, but I'm going to say this to you. In many parts of Hinduism, God does not have name and form. It's called nirguna, without quality, right? But even the nirguna teachers have created temples because we recognize that saguna, with form, is the way we can connect. Our hearts do not melt at the name of the universe, of the infinitely variable source of the self, right? How do you connect with that? You can't love that which you cannot experience. You can't experience that which does not touch your senses. And so temples in the Hindu tradition are sensory experiences. I say this because if you haven't been to a temple, this is a spoiler alert, it's going to be a sensory overload to your Western thing, because there's a lot going on. All right. If you're ready, I'm going to take you into the temple. Usually, I used to do this tour in person at the temple. It's beautiful. All I ask of you is to take your shoes off. We just hate shoes. I'm sorry. But other than that, there's no other requirement. Of course, you can't smoke inside, but hey, who smokes inside a building these days anyway? But just take your shoes off. You're good to go. Come inside the temple with me, and you will feel what I'm talking about. But I can't do that because we're here. So I will show you. But you're going to have to imagine the sweet smell of saffron, of camphor, of jasmine wafting in the air as you walk in with me. Because those smells you're going to experience as soon as you're near any of those buildings. Because we're evoking a sense of purity, of abundance, of beauty and joy. These smells are important, right? And then I will take you inside. Lights lit. Okay, this is a temple. This is the Shiva Vishnu temple. Let me come to you. I'll show you where it is. And if you're in the Bay Area, I ask, let me know and I will take you there. This is the temple I teach yoga at. It's just fun. Come on. Where are we? Zoom, zoom, zoom. Okay. We're going to this temple just for fun because I have the videos here. Ornate Hindu temple and cultural center. That's exactly what it is. This is it right here in the Bay Area city of Livermore. We're going to go into this temple. What am I looking at? This is the temple. This is the front of the temple, and we're going to go into this temple. And I'm just picking a random day. I have more videos over here. Let's see. One second. Where is my famous? Okay, here. More videos. I got videos. Okay, here you're still seeing my screen. I don't know. Stop share. I'm going to restart. One second. That thing is stopped. Okay. You're seeing this? Okay. So this was earlier in the year. Okay, hold on. No sound. Right. One sec. Sorry, I got to do this again with sound. With sound. Okay, it is with sound. Perfect. All right. Now this is fire. This is a sacred fire altar. It has sacred geometry. Kaylin, you will recognize the shape. This is a fire altar. You're going to see fruits over here. This is not every day at the temple, but this is a special event at the temple. And fire sacrifices are very critical to the Hindu tradition. Let's hear it for a few seconds. All right. A lot of people chanting, they're chanting in Sanskrit. You're going to see a few things. The sacred fire in his hand. Okay, in his hand, you're seeing a wooden stick, and what he's pouring is ghee. Ghee is clarified butter. And he's pouring that into the fire. Obviously, it's going to, this is sacred. So Agni, it's a sacred fire. He's sitting in a particular direction, these two people, and you're seeing fruits and other offerings. You're seeing this, which is a bronze pot filled with water, with leaves and a coconut on top. This is a very classic kalash design. Kalash design. This is it's to hold sort of the spirit, so to speak. And then he's chanting. There's a lot of this going on. Me cut to something else. Let's see what else is going on. People sitting around looking at their phones. That's hardly interesting. Okay, let's see what's going on here. Okay, well, what's going on here is a lot of internet lag is what's going on. Okay, let's see once again. Okay, perfect. Now you're seeing the Utsava Murti. These are the traveling images of God. What's been happening here, I need to tell you, is that the Hindu temple follows all Hindu temples in general follows a Jupiter cycle, 12 years. Every 12 years, essentially we are asking the divine, this particular form, to come reside into this deity, this form, Murti, so that we may pray to them. But then the temple needs maintenance, you need repairs and upgrades and so on. So then every 12 years, you tell them, all right, can you enter this bronze pot? And I will carry you outside so I can then clean the space around, right? And so now they have been carried out, and these smaller forms of that particular divinity. You're going to see a lot of gold chains, a lot of jewelry, a lot of headgear, a lot of flowers you're going to see somewhere else as well. A lot of color. The marks on their forehead means that they are Vaishnavas, from the Vishnu, sort of followers of Vishnu. You're going to see other marks on the forehead that are Shiva followers. Good. Now, this is the smaller version, again, because this is outside the temple. The temple was being repaired at this time, every 12 years, right? So you're seeing, this is the statue of Vishnu, Vasudeva. Vishnu means that which pervades everything. So it's here. He has two consorts or wives. Don't think of them as conventional wives. These are all, highly symbolic. But this is Mother Earth. She with the parrot over here. This is Mother Earth, because he has rescued her, and then he had to marry her as a result. So she's here. And this to his right is Goddess Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth. and she gives wealth that money can be spent on welfare of society. You're seeing that form here. Here you're seeing another form of Vishnu as Lord Ram, his brother, his wife, and Hanumanji over here like this in that form. So you're seeing these shapes. Starting more sacrificial. Sound. Pay attention to the sound. Okay. So that sound is a classical, instrument, that particular form of music. By the way, to your question on Ayurveda and yoga, even music is highly religious in the Hindu tradition, and the ragas all, depending on the time of day, are to a particular deity and so on. So everything is very symbolic in the Hindu tradition. Okay, here's what's going on. So here, they're all priests. By the way, this was a big event. So priests have also come from India, and you're going to see a lot of these sort of things. I'm not sure how to explain this. I'm going to keep moving on. Not Holy Land. Okay, this is a typical form. Okay, here, let me show you. So these are some of the Vishnu avatars. This is Narasimha. In one of the stories, this is very, very interesting. If you're a lawyer or if you know lawyers, you'd appreciate this story, because essentially this is the story of Narasimha. He's half man, as you're seeing, half lion, right? And and this is Prahlad, his devotee. And there's a backstory that he's a devotee, his father is a materialist, and his father has won, essentially he wins the grace of God, I think Brahma, who says you're safe inside and outside and from man and beast and so on. So essentially like a legal contract that is watertight, right? But of course, to destroy him, Vishnu comes in this form, which is none of the above. Essentially, he kills him neither inside nor outside, but at a pillar. He comes out of a pillar. He's neither man nor beast because he's half man, half lion. And then he carries this, he has a mace and everything, and he destroys this sort of materialist. And so this is the Narasimha avatar. Very, very powerful, very potent. This is the Varaha avatar, and this is Mother Earth. So Mother Earth has descended into the ocean and must be rescued. And so Sri Vishnu comes in the form of this wild boar. You're seeing his horns. He pulls the Mother Earth out of that of the earth, and this is the Varaha avatar, and so on. So different forms of divinity with amazing and wonderful stories that are associated. These are the actual in the temple. If you go now, these are upstanding. So these were to be consecrated and brought in because new murtis, new idols had to be put in and made sacred again. So right now they're lying down and being prayed to, and these are the forms that are inside. I'm giving you a sense of the sound, right? The bell is very important. The fruits are very important. The lights are very important. Everything is important in the execution of Hindu rituals and rites. You're seeing people with, mostly cotton. They're wearing cotton because it's good for the. Seth, your hand is up. What is your question, sir?
My question is, what language are they chanting in?
Mostly Sanskrit. Okay. It might be Telugu or Tamil, some parts, but mostly the verses they're chanting are all from the Vedas, so they'll be Sanskrit.
Thank you.
Okay. So that's the sort of experience of going to a temple. This is Shivlinga. This is the form of Shiva, and this is the Shivlinga that's inside in the temple now, I think. Yeah. Okay. So this is typically how they're chanting and they're consecrating. Remember the coconuts I told you about, and those the bronze pots, they're right here. You're seeing, this is an important thing I just wanted to show you. This is holy grass, and it's a cut of grass called kusha, and that's what's in his hand, and it's sacred, and that's what's being used to spray holy water. Okay, so that's what's going on outside the temple. Let me see if I can find you something from inside the temple. Let's see. Because by this day 5 or 6, I think the temple was already ready. Oh, this is the top of the temple. We don't. Okay, let's go inside. We're here. So here, this is the inside of the temple. You can see the riot of colors. That's what I wanted to show you. It's a sensory experience going to a temple. People are wearing broad ranges of color. You will see a lot of silver and gold in this temple now. Here, watch this. Watch this, watch this. Silver and gold all around. A certain ex-president would be very pleased with that. But this is the actual temple. We're inside from one angle, looking at this is happening at the Vishnuji side of the temple. Shivaji side is here. This particular prayer is happening here. You see this color is sacred, and you see a lot of people wearing this orangish early morning sun color that's inside. Let's hear it a little bit more. Okay, so you get the idea, right? That's what's going on. This is during special days. Usual days is quiet. You go pay your respects. Essentially, the understanding is in these temples that God is being asked to live there. So the priests that you're seeing, they're not there to talk to you or to sermonize. And I'm going to show that in the Venn diagram I show you. They're not there to tend to your spiritual needs. They're there to take care of the gods. So they wake them up in the morning, they bathe them, they give them breakfast, they give them an afternoon nap, they put them to sleep in the night. The whole sequence must be followed. And it's ritually pure. You have to shower and bathe before you touch divinity. Everything is for the divinity. And they're taking care of their needs, because essentially these are living gods from that point on, right? Once you've consecrated them. Because think about it, what separates me from my dead body is my life force, is it not? The rest of my body is physically the same. The life force, once it enters a form, that form becomes alive. And so these, we don't call them idols because I am using it to explain to you, but these forms are alive for us because we've invited the life force into them. That's an important thing to know, that we are not idol worshippers. We understand the divine is one and the divine is everywhere. But for the sake of engagement and for my heart to melt in surrender, I must invite them into this form that is pleasing to my eyes, so I may offer my prayers to them. That is the spirit. Right? And so you might have read about all those, the golden calf worshippers and those other heathens. All that, you may have thought that they're stupid. Well, they may have certainly been stupid, more power to you. But the Hindus know what we're doing, because we're inviting that life force into these forms knowingly, because we're saying respectfully, so that we may pray to you. So our hearts might melt. So that the sense of myself that I'm having, I'm so filled with myself, I don't want to be filled with myself. I want to be filled with you and be engaged in divine surrender with you, with your spirit, right? And I can't do that if you don't have a physical form, because I can't, my brain can't process that. Many Hindu schools of philosophy don't buy that. They laugh at idol worship. And so some of the reformist Hindu sects have gone back to the fire worship. In my own family, one part of my family does that. And that's all good. But I'm explaining to you what happens in a temple. This is the prevailing logic of the temple. And you have a question. Sorry, I saw that, but I wanted to finish my thought out.
And I fully respect that. Thank you. So the first is a follow-on to Seth's question, which is, are there any parts of this ceremony that are performed in Hindi?
Yeah, Hindi is this language spoken mostly in North India. This is a South Indian temple. So most of the ceremonies are not going to be Hindi. However, when I practice at home, there are some parts, some prayers in Hindi that I can also chant. My own conversation with God, the things I talk to God about, is in Hindi or English, because God speaks the language of my heart, whatever that language. He doesn't need to me to speak in Sanskrit or Latin, right? But these are all in Sanskrit, and there's a specific reason for that. But yes, to answer your question, yes.
Okay, thank you. And then my second question, you partially answered it in talking about the orange of some of the people's dress. I'm wondering about the symbolism. When people were outside, most folks were dressed either in the saffron or in a green. Is there specific symbolism of those colors?
The yogis in the in the lands, in and around India and wherever they came from, who knows where they came from, but the yogis were very scientific people. They investigated the effect of everything: smells, sounds, colors, and so on. So even sounds mean something. Even though each mantra, the geometry of that mantra is very specific to me as a person. So colors and the colors of the clothes do have a significance, and they found that by practice. I'll give you an example. In food and Ayurveda, Kailan, you should back me up if you agree. Some things like ghee is like clarified butter. It has an impact on the body, which is it clarifies the mind and it brings peace and calm. Versus if you take spices, it makes you a little more angry and sort of a little more sort of outbound and anxious. There you go, Astrid. I'm appreciating this class now. At least the cat has become activated, which is good. So colors, to answer your question, and colors do matter, and they have a very specific significance in the Hindu tradition. The saffron, the color of the morning sun, sort of light orange, is sacred because it brings calmness and a sense of peace. So in fact, sweet and fatty things are similar. They bring a sense of calmness. Mildly sweet and fatty things. Sour and bitter things make us lethargic and so on. So that's the sort of Ayurvedic understanding. It's the same in the Hindu tradition. Ashran?
Is there ever a separation of the women and the men in these temples?
Not in this temple, except when there are some prayers happening, like community sitting, then the men sit on one side, women sit on another side. But not when you're visiting, generally speaking, there is no separation. There are some temples that are women's only. There are some temples that only non-menstruating, so older women or really young girls can go, but not when they're, they could be having periods. There are some temples where men cannot go. But usually you should be able to go to all temples and all religious things at all times, except when they're having periods. And that period, generally, you wouldn't go to a temple.
And is there a separate sort of temple experience for the children?
My temple experience is running around the temple with my brother and chasing him around. But always fun. And the sweet meats, and the sweet prasad they give is always something I look forward to. But other than that, no. We have a community center on the side where we have children's classes, and as you would fully expect from an Indian community, there are spelling bee and robotics classes there. So so, go figure. Okay, what are people doing when they're menstruating? So women generally, I mean, they may not be going to a temple, even at the home. They may not be going into the kitchen either. Earlier days. Now, of course, none of that, people remember. But earlier days, you'd sit in a room and just relax, I guess. I don't want to be disrespectful, but that, I think, is my understanding. Yes, Kelly, question.
I'm kind of hoping I can explain or ask this properly.
Yes, thank you.
Like, there's a tendency in some schools of thought to sort of favor sattva, like that subtle kind of quality. And I'm noticing like in the temple and all the color and all the music and it's very rajasic, and so, and like meaning for people who don't know rajas, it's like more, there's movement, there's transformation, there are a lot of qualities happening and it's moving. And I'm wondering like, just, kind of, maybe can you speak to that a little bit about just like what that is and like how that adds to the experience versus sattva?
Yes, that's a great question. Thank you, Kiran. So just to clarify, there are three qualities that are essential in all existence, not just human beings, which is sattva, rajas, and tamas. Sattva is the quality of clarity. Rajas is the quality of movement. And tamas is the quality of inertia, of holding back and ignorance, right? And all of think of them as the brakes, the accelerator, and the steering wheel of your car. Now you got to move all three. If your foot's always on the brake, so if you're always rajasic, always outbound, then you're going to run into something and have an accident. If you've always got your foot on the brake, you're never going to move, and therefore that's going to be bad. And then, of course, if you're always you need a mode of clarity to see things, right? So all of those are at play in the Hindu sort of way of life. Most so the general preference in the Hindu tradition is that most people that are interested in spirituality must be in the sattvic, in the mode of clarity. If you're outbound, so if I have onions or garlic, or if I have meat or spices, then my tendency is I'm a little more aggravated, more outbound, right? If I have something that is old and dry, then I have this tendency of wanting to relax. I've had too much of that turkey, I want to lie down, that sort of stuff, right? And those are not good modes to be in a spiritual pursuit. So in general, the temple experience, the mode we want to get to is clarity. Now, the mixing of color and sounds, you're right, is to get us into an active state of clarity, which is to say, if we're clear and we don't want to move, then there's nothing being created, right? Usually we're lethargic. We are laid back and we want to get out of bed and then do something. So what this does is it allows us to find that equal balance where we can be, and this, Kellen, as a yogi, I can explain, the autonomic nervous system has the sympathetic and parasympathetic. So rest and digest and fight or flight. We want to be smack at the center of this. Neither resting and digesting too much, because then we'll be sleeping, or in fight or flight mode, because then we'd be panicking and we'd be out of control. We want to be relaxed and alert. So that's the yogi's project. It's to get to a state where I'm utterly relaxed and completely alert, because then I can do the task before me. So all of these are to emulate that state, to get into that state where I'm in an active place where I can engage with divinity and not in a lethargic, laid back thing. I'm having a dream, that sort of stuff. So maybe I over answered, but I'll move along. I also wanted to show you, what's happening in the big fat Indian wedding, because it's so much fun. So I'll show you some of that. There's something over here. I wanted to show you what's going on just for fun. The weddings generally around, an altar. These are the moms, of course. Let's get to the couple somewhere here. This is the bride. North Indian and South Indian weddings tend to be different. Brides generally wear red, which is a symbol of course, vibrancy, like you were saying, Kellen, of life, vibrancy. It's a sacred color for us. So brides generally wear red, not black or white, because those are not considered. White is considered extremely sacred, but not, like you're saying, it's a sattvic color, not a rajasic. This is vibrancy, fertility. Right? This is the bride, obviously. And then the groom is going to come along at some point. This is the groom. And usually there's a sacrifice, there's a fire around which they're going to walk. Depending on if this is North Indian or South Indian, they're taking vows. Okay, more. Where are the guests? Okay, now the actual ceremony is going on. more chanting, vows being taken. Typically, I think 4 vows being taken, gifts being given, and look at the amount of gold that the bride is wearing. That's an important thing. He's throwing rice on her. This is a conventional South Indian form of dressing up. You see different clothes, right? Here, so this is always fun. What's this? Flowers. I don't know if that's for Instagram or for something else. And there's a bunch of games, so I'm going to stop sharing. It's a lot of fun. But the thing is, after the actual sharing of vows and walking around the fire, then you have to play games. They're basically icebreakers, because in many cases, the bride and groom haven't really spent any time knowing each other. So you have to break the ice, and there's like really, really wild games that happen. You drop a ring into milky water, and you have to fight for it, and that sort of stuff. One of the other, I'm going to finish up with one fun memory. One of the North Indian customs is that because it's a sacrificial fire, it's sacred. You have to take your shoes off. Like I told you, we don't like shoes as much, right? So the shoes, the groom's shoes, it is the bride's younger sister's job to steal those shoes and hide them away for ransom. And then there's a whole negotiation that happens on how to win your shoes back from her. So the whole point is to break the ice, get the families to know each other, and so on. So these have happened. It's a very fun, very exciting sort of thing that the Hindu weddings are. And you should attend one if you get the opportunity. There's a ton of fun. All right, I've given you a sneak peek into the temple. I've shown you a sort of religious ritual, in this case, a wedding. Any question on those before I talk to you about spiritual care needs in the Hindu community?
This is just a comment. I have a very good friend. He's Chinese. He's married to an Indian, and it'll be, I guess, a lot of problem kind of in the wedding. Like which rituals to adopt. It'll be like we all love our rituals, so it'll be fun.
I have two. This is what most people do, right? I have 2 different weddings. It's good fun. Double the fun. the other thing, sorry.
Is there rigidity in terms of, is there rigidity or ideas around queerness and gender and those things? Like, how's that doing?
Oh yeah. Let me tell you. So I have the exact answer for you, but for that I need to go to the internet, because of course that's what one does. Here, okay. I'm going to show you an image, and I'll ask you what you're seeing. Here, let me show you more, just so that you're clear what you're seeing. I know. Let's see. We find one that's even more androgynous. Let's go for this one. Too small. Okay, let's go to images. All right, let's look at this one. Come on, what happened here? Half male, half female. So as a yogi, I can tell you that if you see one of those yoga charts, the chakra charts that you see in a snake sort of image, one side is feminine, one side is masculine. And then, so this is the moon side, this is the sun side, the female side, male side, and it alternates all the way down the chakras. So we understand gender very differently in the Hindu tradition. That was Shiva. Shivji in one form is half male, half female. And there are stories, very interestingly, of my own people, if you go all the way back. So there's one particular story in which there's one person who's 1 month who's male and another month she's female, alternating. And then so the children they have from the male dynasty are one kind of people, and the children they have from the female side are another people. That's the founding story. In another story, Vishnu, who is obviously male, he has to do some, help the gods with some particular thing. He comes in the form of a very attractive woman, Mohini, right? So it's understood. This is in one of the other stories, the Mahabharata. The heroes of that particular story, they have to spend 1 year in absolute. They have agyatwas. They have to hide and not be found for 1 year. So one of the heroes, he's the eighth archer, so the most macho man that you can find, because he's a good dancer. He hides as a woman. He has a curse. He has to, he becomes a woman and he hides and teaches dance to a princess. Of course, at the end of that 1 year, he marries her, but that's for later. But it's all, so this Victorian sexual sort of thing is kind of Victorian, and we have, you might see that in India, the Victorian Moors, but in the tradition, that is not the case. There's a tremendous volume of fluidity, understood.
Is that true with sexuality in addition to gender?
Yeah. If I show you, some of the temples have amazing art, ornate art in front of you. You will see all manner of sexual events being depicted, and any combination. Do your own math. That you can imagine. It's out there. It's there. So it's. I don't know what to tell you. Ardhanarishwara is exactly the spelling killing. Yes. Yeah. Ardha means a half. Nari is woman. Ishvara is Shiva himself. So Ardhanarishwara, half woman Shiva. So, and that, by the way, if you're Buddhist, you'll go to many Buddha statues. You'll see, especially I think in the Vietnamese ones, where Buddha is sitting like this, right? Half eyes open. This eye is looking inside. This eye is looking outside. This is the moon eye. This is the sun eye. You see that? Questions, comments? A whole third of the class is left, so I'm very disappointed we're going to end. But hey, let me quickly show you my slide, because why not? So let me slide. We're done seeing internet. Let's go back to my slide. All right. Now I want to tell you a little bit about. Is this really the slide? Okay, just give me a sec. I'm going to do some private Googling. Private searching. I apologize for you having to see all my other stuff. Session 1. Okay, I'm going to open this. Okay, I run, if you're interested in Hinduism in general, you should look this guy up. Looks like me because it is me. This is Hindu Community Institute, where a program we teach, pre-chaplaincy essentially, also me. And essentially people who join this course can go on to become Hindu chaplains. Let me go to, there you go. So this is Hindu chaplaincy. People go to our program, then they go to GTU and finish the interreligious chaplaincy program and become, full Hindu chaplains. Now, in that course, I describe what's happening to the world, and that's the slide that I'm trying to get to. It's a Venn diagram because, of course, being an engineer is not something you can exorcise out of yourself. So I'm going to show you a Venn diagram. There's two diagrams I wanted to show you. Let me show you this first. Okay. All right. I think I'm going to go here. Okay. So the Judeo-Christian society is a one-stop shop for spiritual needs, which is you go to the Friday, Saturday, Sunday organization, the same building, you get ministering, confidential conversation, sermonizing, prayers, and the community bubble that you live in. This is a one-stop shop, all things under one roof kind of deal. That's how the Judeo-Christian society is built. The Hindu society, for all its worth, is coming at it from the other side. The Hindu society thinks of the entire community, Vasudhaiva, the entire world is one community. So we think of the entire community bubble as essentially the community ocean, not a bubble. And you don't do all things under one shop. Remember, there was this one shop where you did, somebody was doing the prayers and giving you the talk, and you could talk to them for confidential stuff, and they could minister to your spiritual care needs, right? No can do. Hindus, you go to a guru for something, your uncle, astrologer, and everyone in your neighborhood is up in your business giving you confidential advice. You go to the temple every once in a while, and you go to a scriptural expert for explaining what the scripture says. You do not go to the same thing for the same thing to all different people. They're completely different establishments. Now, this works in India where it's in the air you breathe. What's happening now is this is coming apart. The Judeo-Christian society, the one-stop shop, isn't working as much, and the Hindu people are now no longer in the community ocean. We find ourselves meeting here. Is sort of the age of DIY spirituality, trademark. This is a phrase I made up. The point is, we're in an age of DIY spirituality where the community bubble has shifted to some kind of sort of thing over here, where you, all the fine ladies and gentlemen on today's meeting, are here offering advice on the spiritual care and chaplaincy needs, and you're a part of the community. There's gurus, astrologers, therapists, life coaches, also doing some part of some business. There is a large market in personal rituals, habits, your bullet coffee or what have you, personal rituals that people are set up because sacred rituals are no longer, something that interests you. And for understanding scriptures, there's all manner of YouTube talks, right? So I'm coming from here, you're coming from here, we're meeting in the middle, right? This is what's happening in the middle. It turns out this society is an organized religion, right? The framework that I'm showing you in this slide is an organized religion. This society is a self-organizing religion. This third version that I'm presenting to you here is something in the middle. It's neither organized because I'm not your pope, right? There's no pope in this system, but it is not hopeless. It may be popeless. Right, so there is something that's going on over here that's interesting and organizing everything together. You do want to belong, right, to the community. That's the model that we think is happening in the world. No longer belonging to this side or this side. It's kind of sort of in the middle, sort of DIY spirituality. The role you play, and I don't have enough time today, otherwise I'd show you all my slides and etchings, as you can imagine, but let me talk you through the way we see the needs of the people. What's happening is, if you live your life alone, you kind of live your life alone. It's what you do, you go through your life alone. It turns out the society is increasingly more and more alone. The state of loneliness is such that people have all sorts of issues because we're separated out from each other. Anyway, this is life alone. You live out the entirety of your life by yourself, right? Gotta go through everything without support. Now, who the heck wants that? Well, anyone who lives apart from their family and their community feels this way. It's terrible to be in this state. Now, in the Hindu tradition, of course, as all old societies, there's a whole band of support and sharing. Your family, your friends, your extended network, we're all together before birth to long after death, celebrating and supporting all the way. Now, you juxtapose the issues of life, and there's someone there to support you, someone that you can talk with, someone that you can engage with. Now, if you lived only in the loneliness band, you live your life without getting the support. But what good is that? Now, what we're doing with our program and what I offer to you, that as spiritual care people, you are here, you are working as an extended member of the community, of the family, coming together with people where they need help and where they are, right? And so as you're building your curriculum, which is what we do, we build out a curriculum. We're saying, okay, let's talk about what's happening in this particular stage of life and why this is happening and how may we support them. that sort of stuff. So that's how we look at our whole spectrum of life and how we play it out. All right. If Elaine's gone, bye Elaine. All right, so that's the framework that we use. So now
I just want to say, sorry
yes,
to interrupt. I saw Mahesh in there, and I work with Mahesh, and he was
Mahesh
labeled as something. Gaurav, could you say?
Yeah.
I work with Mahesh. What was he labeled as, or where was he situated?
Mahesh Pavana is teaching a Stanford affiliate. He does spiritual care at like Hindu, sort of spiritual care.
Yes, that's right.
So he's there talking about what's happening at the hospital. What kind of help do people need when they're in hospital? He comes and teaches our classes. They're a ton of fun.
Oh, great. Wonderful. Shout out to Mahesh.
Yeah, he's an awesome guy. We love him. Yeah. And then we have a whole bunch of other stuff. Not enough time to get into this, but that's our vision for what spiritual care is, which is reinflate this axis, bring back the sense of community and family through your support. People feel that there are other humans that we can connect with. Why? Because I think that's what the function of a society is. I'm going to finish with these slides because I think we're done with time. Imagine for this particular segment, I take you to a planet, not just another lonely planet, but let's go to Mars. On Mars, the conditions are kind of terrible, actually. There's low atmospheric cover, so there's a high temperature range. Every day, the temperature goes from -20 Celsius to -80. Every day. This is not like average. This is every day. It's terrible. You can't live there. You cannot enjoy life there, right? On Earth, on the other hand, you kind of live in a nice, well-regulated range, right? And that, I would like to submit to you, that is the function of any society. It is air conditioning for the spiritual self. The function of a well-run society is to insulate the emotional states of its members, not to go through extreme highs and lows because there's no one to talk to. If you're happy or you're sad or you want to celebrate or you want to ask questions, the society must be there to help each other, to connect with each other. That's why we're trying to reinflate this axis, because we think society is broken. And it's broken because we have lost our connection to each other. The work you do, the work you've signed up to do, I hats off to you for choosing to do it, because you're restoring this sense of connection. You're restoring balance in this society where we are connected to each other and we're there for each other. If you don't do what you do, we'll all be separated. We will all be lonely, and we will all go through, even if we're all hugely successful, we'll be extremely unhappy, right? And it's because of you and your choice to selflessly be there for other people that society will once again become once more connected and emotionally more regulated. And so thank you for doing what you're doing, and best wishes for doing what you've taken on for the rest of your lives. And now I'm done with the talk, and I'm ready to take any more questions and comments, and then I will give you the closing prayers. Questions, comments, feedback, anything that I said that I have offended you, I apologize. Once again, I don't mean to disparage. I just want to set a contrast and sort of present an honest view. Asherin, please.
So you mentioned earlier about Sanskrit and Celtic. Do you and the connection between Gaelic and Sanskrit? Do you see that? I mean, is that a linguistic truth?
Yeah. I mean, so there's a lot of folk etymology going around, but if you look at what a druid is, right? A druid is a knower of trees, and the Sanskrit word for that would also be tarovid. Same word. Yeah. So they obviously these were cultures that were contiguous or continuous. They were talking to each other all the time.
Yes.
You can see that in the hymns.
Yes.
You can see that in a lot of the pre-Christian stuff that was going on.
Right.
Fact, amazingly, if you follow this goddess Kibble, right, or Sibyl or Kibble, her temples are all over the European region. But the practice of worship of Kibble, if you just paste that and you send that to a guy in India, they know exactly which temple you're talking about, because I've been to that temple.
Yeah, interesting.
these cultures were not disconnected. We might think that globalization is a new thing. It is not by any means new.
Yeah. I was initiated into a Hindu meditation temple in my 20s and learned to chant there in Sanskrit by a Sanskrit scholar. And after I left that later, I decided to change my name, and what kept coming back to me was Asha, which means hope, right?
Yeah,
Sanskrit. Yeah. And then I actually added the N myself because for other reasons. But I've also chanted in Gaelic with the Kellerjay, and it's amazing how there's this and I have a mantra in Sanskrit that comes and goes. And the same with the Gaelic. So I love language, and I find that fascinating.
Yeah, and there's, I mean, it's amazing the amount of stuff that people did to compare. But yeah, I really enjoyed this session. I really appreciate that you've very kindly listened to everything I had to say and the conversation we had. Is there any one question that I remains, or any feedback, bouquets, everything is fine? I'm happy to.
I just wanted to add, I really related to what you shared, Asharain and Gaurav as well, because for my meditation practice, I do Sanskrit chanting. And for me, and I really related to what you said about the Om, because what I've realized over doing it for many years now is that the sound itself is a transmission. And it's actually, I think, a beautiful thing that I think one of the reasons why for me when we go to temple is that transmission of repeated sound in Sanskrit that's been chanted, as you shared, for thousands of years for the purpose of calling the divine actually is a transmission that then raises consciousness almost without thinking about it. And I think that in a sense, it's beyond the intellect, and it allows, like, chanting in a different language with those tones. I think there's something about it that's not intellectual, but really is for me a transmission. So I really relate. I just want to say I really relate to what you both shared about that.
Yeah. And not just that, I'd like you to pay close attention to Kaylin's background. You're going to see a geometrical shape. That's a Shri yantra. Shri is the goddess of wealth. And so what you're seeing, the geometry behind Kaylin, you're seeing 3 circles and then a lot of triangles. There's essentially 64 triangles, 5 pointing down and 4 pointing up. And they create a very intricate shape, which is a 3-dimensional image that you can imagine. And that's a very powerful mantra for energy and power and wealth and all goodness. And so geometry plays a big role in the Hindu tradition as well. So since Kaylin is sitting there, I thought I'd show you that. All right. Closing prayers are: may all be happy, may all be free from stress, may all see what is auspicious, may no one suffer. And then I will chant Shanti 3 times, which is peace, peace, peace. I invite you to join me by closing your eyes. You can close your eyes, sit comfortably in any posture, sitting with the back straight, the back, neck, and head in a straight line. Close your eyes gently and relax the expression of the face. Just let everything go. Relax. Relax your shoulders. Relax your belly. Let the sound wash over you. Bring a gentle smile to your face and let the smile travel all the way down into your heart. Let the heart smile. Let the heart be reciprocated by smiles from all around the world, smiling back at you. Bring your palms together in Namaskar Mudra at the heart center, pressing the palms together gently, touching the fingers together gently, gently touching the back of the thumbs into the chest. Now bring your attention to the hollow space between the palms. I am going to chant Om once and then the closing prayer, Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina. Exhale completely. Take a deep breath. Inhale. Om. Inhale and chant. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayah, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Take your arms behind your back. Grab your right wrist with your left hand and breathing in, stretch. Breathing out, bend forward in a deep sense of surrender. Come back up, breathing in. Release your hands, rub your palms together to generate some heat. Gently cup your eyeballs and transfer that heat. Massaging the face and the neck. And now blinking, open your eyes and you pull your palms back like an open book. Namaskar. Thank you very much. I wish you the best of luck for your classes, for the weekend and everything else. If you need to reach me, I will type my email I'll type my email so you can find me. Plus, you can always ask Shay and Shay can connect us. Thank you very much and good luck. See you soon.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
Thank
This
you.
was really wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you. This was great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.